The wind came first. Asterisk, not the kind that sings through tall grass, but the kind that rips roof from churches and sand from bone. It barreled down the rail line like a ghost train, unseen but felt, whispering of something coming. Dust curled over the horizon. Rusted nails rattled loose from old planks. And beneath a leaning water tower, two little girls huddled motionless, as if they had turned to stone. Asterisk, one had a crooked braid and dirt smeared across her cheek. The other cradled a broken doll with only one eye. Their dresses, once white, were now shades of the road. They didn't cry, not anymore. Just stared. The train didn't stop. Its thunder roared past like the world saying no. The girls didn't move. Didn't flinch. Just kept staring after it, like they weren't waiting for rescue but mourning the idea of it. Asterisk, but somewhere in the last car, a man stirred. Asterisk, he hadn't planned to look. He never looked anymore. Eyes were dangerous. Eyes saw things they couldn't fix. But something, maybe the shift of shadow or the hollow stillness of two small bodies in a land meant for wolves, pulled his gaze out the crack in the wooden freight wall. He saw them, 6 years old, maybe less, barefoot, abandoned, alive. But only just. Asterisk, he turned away, sat back down on his crate, closed his eyes. He'd learned to shut the world out long ago. Trains moved, time passed. Wounds scabbed over. He reached for his flask, touched the silver locket in his coat out of habit, and told himself they'd be fine. But 3 miles later the brake line hissed. The train groaned. The engineer cursed. Screeching iron split the silence of the plains, and Silas Kane climbed down. He didn't explain himself, didn't have to. The men on the train knew. The look of someone running from something they couldn't leave behind. He walked back along the track with nothing but his coat, a tool satchel, and a voice in his head that sounded too much like his wife's. Asterisk, the walk back took longer than he wanted. His leg, wounded in the war and never fully right, dragged a little in the gravel. Buzzards circled overhead, drawn to something they hadn't feasted on yet. Asterisk, when he found the girls again, the one with the braid was singing, soft, breathless, to the doll in her arms. The other girl looked up. "You come to take us away?" she asked. Her voice was like dry leaves. Asterisk, Silas didn't speak. He crouched down. Looked them over. No bruises on the face. No blood. But their fingernails were black with dust and hunger. They'd been here for more than a day, maybe 2. Asterisk, where's your folks? They gone, the other girl whispered. Who left you? Asterisk, the second girl looked toward the hills. She said, stay put. She said she'd come back, but she didn't. Asterisk, he saw it then, the rope marks in the dirt like a wagon had been. Parked beside the tower and driven off fast. A bottle cap, half a bread heel. And something else, a page torn from a Bible, tucked into the doll's chest. Asterisk, he didn't ask more. They didn't offer. Questions could come later. Silas carried them, one girl in his arms, the other on his back. They didn't weigh much. He'd once hauled a wounded soldier 5 miles through smoke and screaming. This was nothing like that except. It felt heavier. Asterisk, the sky was darkening. The wind picked up. Coyotes howled somewhere off behind them. And still, he said nothing. Words were too brittle for a moment like this. The cabin stood at the edge of the pines. Weather-worn, patched, roof sagging in the middle like an old man's shoulders. A riverbed curled behind it, mostly dry. A deer skull hung by the door, nailed through the eye. It had been 5 winters since anyone else crossed that threshold. Silas unlocked the door, stepped inside, and laid the girls down on the cot where his wife had once bled out. Asterisk, he turned away from the memory, shoved it back into the shadows. Asterisk, the girls watched him move, eyes wide but still silent. They didn't ask whose home this was. Maybe they knew it didn't matter. In places like this, people didn't ask permission. They asked forgiveness. And only if they survived long enough to need it. Asterisk, that night he made soup from jerky and beans. The girls didn't speak while they ate, only watched him with the stillness of hunted animals. When the bowl was empty, the one with the braid reached into the lining of her dress and pulled out a folded paper. Asterisk, it was a drawing. Asterisk, stick figures. 2 girls. A woman, red crayon for hair. A house on fire. Asterisk, she didn't explain. She didn't. Me too. Asterisk, Silas folded it gently and put it on the shelf. He looked out the window. Storm clouds were rolling in over the ridge, thick and mean. Thunder rumbled. Asterisk, what's your names? He asked, voice rough. I'm Lark, the braided one said. I'm Uni, whispered the doll holder. Asterisk, he nodded once. You can stay here until we figure something out. Asterisk, Uni looked up. You a preacher? Asterisk, Silas blinked. No. Asterisk, then. Why you carry that? She pointed to the silver cross around his neck. Asterisk, he hesitated, touched the chain. It had belonged to his daughter. Reminds me of someone. Neither girl pressed that night. As the wind screamed against the shutters and wolves called to one another in the valley, Silas sat in the rocking chair beside the fire. He didn't sleep. He watched the flames, listened to the rhythm of two. Small chests rising and falling in dreams he'd never know. Something had shifted, not loudly. Not like a door slamming or a shout in the dark, but like a key turning in a lock that had rusted shut. Asterisk, he didn't want them here. Didn't want their need or their questions or their soft trust, but the world didn't care what he wanted. It had sent them anyway, asterisk, and somewhere in the night. As lightning carved the sky in jagged scars, Silas Kane whispered something only the fire heard. Asterisk, I'm not ready. But the world had already answered, ready or not. They're yours now. Asterisk, the wind settled. But the silence that followed wasn't peace. Asterisk, it was the kind of hush that comes after the world decides to test you. And by morning, the sky had lost its color. Gray rolled over the pines. The sun never broke through. Asterisk, Uni coughed in her sleep. Asterisk, Lark lay curled beside her, eyes open, watching the old man who hadn't yet admitted he'd become something again, something fragile, something responsible. Asterisk, Silas stirred the ashes in the stove and added more kindling. The beans had nearly run out. The rain barrel was bone dry, and Uni's forehead felt hotter than the stove. Fever. He found a scrap of cloth, dipped it in what little water remained in the canteen, and laid it across her brow. She didn't open her eyes, but she whispered in her sleep. Asterisk, don't let him find us. Asterisk, Silas didn't ask. He just pressed the cloth gently again, then stepped out into the wind. Asterisk, he took the trail west. Boots cutting into half-frozen mud, past trees bent by years of winter and lightning. A day's ride west was. A rail town called Merrill's Bend, if you could call it a town. 3 buildings, 2 dogs, and one man who fancied himself the law. Silas didn't bring the girls. He brought a revolver. Though asterisk, by the time he reached the general store, the sky was spitting sleet. An old bell above the door gave a weak jingle. As he stepped inside asterisk behind the counter, a half-drunk man with a badge on his chest leaned back in a creaking chair. He didn't smile, asterisk. Well now, he said slowly. Look what the tracks dragged in, asterisk. Need quinine, dried goods, milk powder. Asterisk. Don't remember you having a wife? Asterisk. Didn't say I had one. Asterisk, the sheriff squinted, eyes sharp now. Heard a tale this morning? 2 girls found under the water tower, looked near dead. Wagon tracks headed south. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Asterisk, Silas didn't blink. Would it matter if I did? Asterisk, the sheriff grinned without warmth. Depends who's asking after them. Folks got reasons to dump kids. Sometimes it's mercy, sometimes it's mess. Either way ain't yours? Asterisk, Silas leaned closer, slow and measured. You ever bury a child, Emmett? Asterisk, that made the man flinch. Silence stretched. Between them like a drawn bow, Silas laid silver on the counter. Quinine, milk, bread. He walked out before the answer came. By dusk, the fever had worsened. Uni thrashed in her sleep, muttering about fire and wheels and shadows. Silas sat beside her, watching every breath, every tremble. Asterisk, Lark sat in the corner, knees hugged. To her chest. Is she gonna die? Silas didn't answer. The knock came at midnight. Asterisk, not loud. Just enough to freeze blood? Asterisk, he rose without sound, stepped to the door. Gun drawn, a voice outside, not a man's. I saw your smoke, she said. He opened the door a sliver. A woman stood there, soaked to the bone, a long scar trailing down her jaw like a river carved in stone. Her coat was Confederate gray, worn and patched. She held a basket in one hand and a hunting knife in the other. Silas didn't move. Name's Maeve, she said. I live 3 hills east. Been watching the tower. Saw you take M***. What do you want? To help. Girl's burning up. I heard her from the trees. He didn't invite her in. But he stepped aside. Maeve crossed the threshold like someone entering a memory, cautious, haunted, familiar with loss. She knelt beside Uni and touched her forehead. Too hot, she muttered. You got yarrow, willow bark? No. She pulled both from her coat, began grinding them in a bowl she'd brought. Lark watched, silent but alert. Silas watched her hands, steady, fast, practiced. Hands that had stitched flesh, poured whiskey into wounds, buried friends. You were a nurse, he said. Maeve nodded. And before that, a ghost. I wear both well. Uni coughed. Her little hand gripped the edge of Silas's coat. Maeve held a spoon to her lips. You got ghosts too, she said softly. He didn't deny it. That night, Maeve stayed by the fire. Lark drifted off first, then Une, her breathing slower now, more even. When the cabin was quiet, Silas poured 2 fingers of whiskey and offered Maeve the first sip. She took it without a word. Outside, the wind began again, pushing smoke sideways across the sky. I know the man hunting them, she said, Silas's jaw clenched. Name's Jonah Vexler. She continued. Used to run with the Burned Circle, post-war gang. Said they were freedom fighters, but all they freed were coffers and corpses. Silas knew the name. He remembered stitching a dying boy, once blue eyes, maybe 17. That boy whispered. A name before he died, Vexler, stepmother ran from him, Maeve said. Tried to buy silence. Those girls saw something. Or heard it, They're just children, They're witnesses. That's all that matters to a man like Jonah. The fire cracked. Shadows danced across the old wood. Silas reached into his coat and pulled out the silver locket. Inside, a sketch of a girl, his daughter. Dead 13 winters now, he handed it to Maeve. I used to believe in fixing things, he said, She opened the locket. Closed it, so... Did I? She said. But sometimes all we can do is carry them. Not fix, just carry. In the morning, Uni opened her eyes. I dreamed you were singing, she told Maeve. Maeve smiled barely. I don't sing any more, then it was the wind. Later that day, Silas found the other drawing hidden in the lining of the doll. Crude, childlike, a man with a whip. A wagon with a false floor. A church burning, he turned it over. One word scrawled in a child's hand, Vexler. The past had caught up, but so had something else. He watched the girls playing in the pale sun. Lark teaching Uni how to stack stones. He watched Maeve sit silently with her scarred hands and her distant eyes. And he knew what he was now, not a savior, but a wall. A line, a choice. The forest didn't move. Not even the birds stirred that morning. Just the kind of stillness that felt like breath being held. The kind that comes before blood is spilled. Silas stood on the porch, watching the girls stack kindling near the stump. Their laughter was faint like something trying to remember joy. Maeve leaned against the cabin post, sharpening her blade with the slow patience of someone who had nothing left to fear. You feel it too, she said without looking. Up, he nodded once. They're close. Maeve's scar caught the light as she straightened. He won't come alone, Good. Silas stepped off the porch. Neither did I, They didn't tell the girls. Children already carry what they shouldn't. He just told them to stay in the root cellar if the wind changed. The wind changed. That afternoon, a red sky crawled in from the east. Dust smeared across the tree line. And from the ridge came 5 riders, slow and heavy, like they owned the silence. Jonah Wexler rode in the center. His coat was coal black, long and stiff from dried blood. His beard was trimmed like a man who needed control over something. His eyes were pale, almost gray. Like ash that never cooled, Silas stood in the field alone. The others stayed hidden, Maeve in the trees, her rifle trained and calm. The girls below ground, holding hands, the broken doll between them like a talisman. Wexler halted 10 feet from Silas. "Well," he drawled, "look what mercy dragged back." Asterisk Silas didn't blink. "Turn around." Asterisk, "Those ain't your?" "Girls, Kane." Asterisk, "They're not yours either." Asterisk Wexler smiled. "They saw something. Heard things they shouldn't. Their stepmom ran from the fire, but she couldn't run from me. Now they carry her sin in their mouths, and sin must be silenced. Asterisk I ain't letting you near them." Asterisk Wexler dismounted slow, pulled off his gloves. "Then it's you that'll fall first." The first shot didn't come from Silas. Maeve's bullet tore through the thigh of the man to Wexler's left. He went down screaming. The others drew fast, but Silas was faster. He moved like a man who didn't care if he lived, only that. They didn't make it past him. The air cracked with gunfire. One rider fell backward into the dirt, rifle spinning from his grip. Another ducked into the woods, but Maeve's second shot found his neck. Blood misted the pine. Asterisk Wexler ducked behind a log. He fired twice. One bullet ripped through Silas's shoulder, the other into the porch beam. Asterisk Silas didn't cry out. Didn't stop. He charged like something risen from ash. He tackled Wexler to the ground, fists finding flesh, knuckles splitting open. They rolled in the dust. Wexler slammed the butt of his pistol into Silas's jaw, but Silas kept coming. Asterisk, "You let that church burn?" Silas growled. "You let those girls watch." Asterisk, "They weren't mine to save." Asterisk, "Neither were they mine." His fist crashed into Wexler's mouth. "But I came back for them." Asterisk. The fight turned savage. No rules. Just blood, grit, and breath through. Broken teeth. Finally, Silas pinned him. Raised the gun. Asterisk Wexler spat blood. "You gonna kill me in front of them?" Asterisk, "They're not watching." Asterisk, "But they'll remember what you chose." Silas stared at him. The memory of his daughter's locket, Maeve's quiet hands, Uni's fevered whisper, Lark's silent drawings, it all pressed in. He lowered the gun. Wexler laughed once. "Weak." Asterisk Maeve stepped forward. "No, human." She kicked the gun away and tied his wrists with barbed wire. "You'll face a trial," she said. Asterisk Wexler sneered. "There is no law out here." Asterisk Silas looked toward the trees. "There is now." Asterisk they dragged the wounded away, left them. For the rail marshal down in Marrow's Bend, he'd take credit. Silas figured. That was fine. The cabin was quiet that night. Silas's arm was wrapped in Maeve's cleanest cloth. His lips split, eyes darkened, but the girls, they smiled. Asterisk Lark sat in his lap while Uni laid her head against his side. The fire glowed warm, soft. The storm had passed. Maeve stood by the door, pack on her back. "You're leaving?" "Silas." Asterisk, "Wasn't meant to stay." Asterisk, "They need you." Asterisk, she smiled, one corner of her mouth only. "No, they have you." He stood, walked her to the edge of the woods. "You'll always have a place here." Asterisk, she looked back once. "So will you?" "Inside yourself, I mean. You didn't fix the past, Silas, but you didn't let it win." He watched her disappear between the trees. Days passed. Then weeks. Asterisk, the cabin filled with voices, crayons, the scent of stew, laughter that hurt in a good way. Silas built a second bed, then a third. He rebuilt the chicken coop. Planted roots. One day Uni brought him a drawing. It was of a man. Asterisk he had a scar on his cheek, a hammer in one hand, and 2 little girls holding on to his coat. "I made you taller," she said proudly. Silas didn't speak, just pulled them both into his arms. Asterisk that night, under the stars, he took out the locket, placed it beside the new drawings on the shelf, asterisk, and whispered, "You were right. They saved me first."